I know I'm not the target demographic for the Fallout TV show.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about a
Fallout TV show.
It wasn't made for him. I want to know what that meant to women of color, to biracial women, to teen women of color, to teens that are biracial.
And so I didn't even watch the first episode of it until yesterday. And I'm not going to be quite nitpicky the same way a lot of people are, but it does seem like to me the more you care about the video games and the more you care about certain details, it makes the show worse. And even in the first episode, there's at least one character that doesn't act in a rational way, and at least one faction that doesn't make obvious sense. So the premise kind of starts out where you have this one vault that for some reason has 3 numbers associated with it because it's supposed to be 3 quote-unquote vaults, which doesn't make sense to me, in that anytime they've done vaults in the past in the Fallout series that had like separate sections to it, it still only had one vault number. And kind of the point of the vault numbers was like you would have an area on a map associated with it. Like you could find a vault in a specific place. It doesn't make sense to have 3 quote-unquote vaults all exactly on the same place when you can just have one vault number designated to it. It doesn't serve any specific purpose. Like they could have done Vault 31A, 31B, 31C or something. So already that seems kind of weird, because it kind of goes against the reason why they had numbers, you'd think, in the first place. The fact that these vaults are basically located on top of, more or less on top of, Los Angeles, and it would basically put them right next to the Master, and like the Master wouldn't have noticed them from the first game apparently for 200 years. They managed that. So it's stuff like that that are just obvious details that if you're familiar with the games, it doesn't make logical sense. So the rationale behind why it's a vault sectioned into 3 is for genetic diversity. My issue with that is segregation discourages genetic diversity. So just the concept of that already goes against, it's genetic diversity so that you don't get birth defects and inbreeding problems. But that already seems to go against that by having it be segregated. So it doesn't make sense. And if you were trying to do that, the correct way to do that is you have like cold storage for human genetic material, and you can artificially impregnate women with that genetic material, and you could have more genetic material stored from a greater variety of people than could ever possibly fit inside of the vault. So something like that would make more sense. Or some kind of gene sequencing DNA thing. Like a machine that can vary genetics. All of that would make more sense than segregating a vault for whatever reason. So already the kind of introduced premise doesn't make sense. At least kind of the way they did the farm is kind of okay, but it goes against a lot of the aesthetics. But, you know, whatever. That the established aesthetics of the past games. It's not that dirt plots with plants weren't in any of the previous games, but usually you'd find possibly a combination of hydroponics and like indoor dirt plots. So that's something that doesn't go against like Bethesda's games. So I don't have, I mean, there's obvious problems with, okay, they start in the vault and then raiders break into one of these 3 vaults. So it implies that there's like 3 doors that are outward facing doors to each vault, because they could only break into one vault and take it over. So that's 3 entrances. But when Lucy leaves, she leaves through what is implied to be the only entrance. So why didn't they, if there's only one outer door and they could just break into the one outer door, why didn't they break into the one outer door and set things up so that whenever anyone opened any of the other vault inner doors, they could just storm whatever vault? So even the plan of the raiders doesn't make any sense. But that's sort of my issue with the vault side of it, mostly, is just that stuff where people aren't behaving in a logical way. Like, there's no perspective of, see, it wasn't written from the perspective of, okay, this is a vault, this is sort of how the vault works. If there were raiders who could breach the outer door, what would they do? It's written from the perspective, it's clearly written from the perspective of, we have this character in a vault, we need an excuse to get this character to leave the vault. We'll use raiders as an excuse. We'll say they broke in somehow and a fight ensues and the main character's dad leaves, and so she has to go find her dad, like in Fallout 3. But they say, okay, all of that stuff has to happen, and then they don't think of the logical progress for all those things that need to happen. Those events kind of just happen because they need to happen. And that's how you know you get bad writing, when they start from, these events need to happen so they happen, and we can't make an organic progression through all those events. So already that's a horrible sign for a TV show. So when it gets to the Brotherhood of Steel, they're presented in no way resembling anything that's ever been depicted in any version of Fallout before, which, again, if you're looking at this in a vacuum, like if you disassociate it with Fallout, fine. But they act religious and they aren't a religious organization. except there's no clear focus on, like, if you're a religious organization, you're gonna have some kind of moral code or moral philosophy, and that's the thing you're gonna emphasize first and foremost and be the main focus, and it's going to inform the decisions of everything else the organization does. Instead, there's like a bunch of people doing stuff without any logical justification. So there's I guess Maximus is the guy who's like the Brotherhood of Steel character that we're supposed to be focused on. He has this transgender friend who is supposedly getting chosen to be out in the field, and his transgender friend gets a razor blade put in their boot, and so it cuts their foot, and for some reason that's considered to be enough of an injury to prevent them from being a field operative. And you might think, okay, that could be enough in real life, but they just showed in a vault that they have stim packs, which in the context of Fallout, it's like it's kind of like a combination of stem cells and stimulants and possibly nanotech-ish stuff, where it accelerates human healing to an extreme degree. And so the Brotherhood has way more resources than even just a singular vault does. So you'd think they could spare things like some medical supplies. And there's an argument to say they'd be able to manufacture medical supplies if they were at all similar to how they were ever depicted before. Like, this is one of the organizations in the Fallout series that is capable of manufacturing. It's them and the NCR, and probably someone like Robert House, who are some of the only, and there's like the gun runners and Fallout New Vegas, so there are certain smaller, more independent organizations that have been depicted that are capable of actual manufacturing, like industrial machinery and stuff like that. So it kind of doesn't make sense that they're ill supplied. The Brotherhood is ill supplied. Like, they can't treat. It would be like a bad injury in real life to have a razor blade cut up the side of your leg, sure. But in the context of Fallout, it doesn't make sense to be such a serious injury that it would keep you out of the field when you can stab some medicine into your leg and wrap it and effectively be good to go again. Because your body would be healed within like a day or so, completely. So it's like super fast healing. And for some reason they have a target that's associated with the Enclave, apparently. Like, people in general would wonder why the Enclave is in this, but you know, whatever. It's a new story, don't associate it with Fallout. Just think of it as its own thing. And so, like, they mention the Enclave and it means nothing in this story, pretty much. So, like, why have it be the Enclave in the first place? And then I think the only thing they did with the ghoul is he's a guy who's buried in the ground and they unbury him and he beats up 3 guys and then the first episode ends. Oh, they did a pre-war part of the episode where it's the guy at the birthday party and they say the thumb up thing is his thing, which doesn't make sense because, like, imagine someone said to a guy, hey, you're the guy who does the high five thing. Do the high five thing. And it's like, what? Because that's... Or you're the guy who waves. Like, it's way too common and a generic thing. Like, it's so ununique sounding of a thing. It doesn't make sense in context. So, I don't know why this show has, like, accolades. Why it has 17 Emmys. And I don't really have any interest in it. It kind of fits what my suspicions were before, that they don't care about the small details, they only care about the aesthetics. So, why should I care about this show?